This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Hi, all. Good evening. Okay. Could you go on mute? Okay. So, yeah. Let's start the micro. Thanks for joining for this microservices demo. Okay. Let's start. So myself, Venkat Srinivas. I'm working as a senior technical architect. Total, I have 50 years of experience. I've been working Java past 15 years. Like I'm working as a full stack developer. I give design solutions. Okay. I've been working on microservices since 2014. So almost I have 6 years of experience. I'm using Spring Boot as well. Okay, let's start. Like, what is microservices? Basically, see, it's an architecture or it's a framework. That's what first as a developer we should start thinking whether it's architecture, it's a framework. A microservices is a architecture. It's not a framework. Okay, it's an architecture. Then how we are going to achieve? Okay, how we are going to achieve microservice architecture, which framework first. Okay, everyone's question is microservice is a framework or it's a technology or architecture. Now we are clear with microservices architecture. Now second question, how can I achieve my microservice architecture for my applications? How I can build which technology, which framework? The second question. Yes, Spring Boot is a framework. We are going to accomplish the microservices architecture using Spring Boot. Now, second question we get, what is Spring Boot, right? What Spring Boot? Every developer, everyone gets why Spring Boot. If you notice, if before like Spring Boot, whenever we say Java programming, Java code, whenever we start, we say Java project. All our minds, we write so much boilerplate code. Like we write so many reusable components within the application. We, as a developer, we used to write so many reusable components. So components. Okay. Okay. Let me go. Okay. So we write so many reusable components like common utils, common component, like cross concerns, like logging. So many things we, as a developer, we start building. Okay. Again, when you connect to database, if you notice when we start like in 2005, 2004, 99, when you want to connect to the database, we have only one way to connect the database using JDBC. We are having 4 drivers. We use pin driver, create a connection. For that also we were writing the reusable code, getting a connection as we separate as a write as a separate reusable method. We get a connection. That's what we are writing, right? So this is what it was the developers who is a development team responsibility. Okay, this was the development team responsibility. Now, what Spring Boot but as a what advantages Spring Boot? So prerequisite for microservice architecture with Spring Boot, just you need to have some basic knowledge on Java, where you should able to what is class, what is variables, what is methods, if you know that, and collections. How can I hold the data like list, map? Okay, if you have this much data in Java, we can build the services. Okay, microservice is an architecture, but how I can first we need to build a service. This service, how it's going to play, how it's going to act in a microservice architecture is a that we will see. Okay, now so you prerequisite for microservice architecture, any person, any technology person, you need a basic Java knowledge, oops concept, what is inheritance, polymorphism, and class variables, exceptions, and you need a list, collections list, array list, and hash map, and how to iterate those, because when you want to retrieve the data, right, you should have some knowledge and retrieval. If that basic knowledge is sufficient, because why, if you know, if you say before like Spring Boot, right, Java developer means we used to know about in detail architecture, like connecting to database using ORM, like if you use Hibernate or whatever ORM framework. As a developer, team responsibility, know, define a entire connection, establishing a connection, and everything as a developer responsibility. Okay, if you take any, not only this connecting to database, if you want to connect to TIBCO, if you want to connect to some message brokers, it's a developer responsibility to create everything. It's our responsibility, developer responsibility. Okay. Okay. So that's why Spring Boot avoided, they removed all boilerplate code, like just write what we want for our business functionality. It's like, you notice, if some people would have worked like rules, right? Any rule engines like Java's rules or TIBCO, we write conditions. Okay, you get a data, you write a conditions. It's like what we want to execute when you insert the data. Like in a microservice architecture using Spring Boot also, we write a code what we want, like which to achieve which business functionality. Okay, so today content we see the application architecture evolutions and microservice benefits and challenges and development tools. Okay.
Yeah, hi Nihal. Actually, we are not able to see your screen. Are you sharing something?
Yes, I think it's currently shared. Correct.
No, it's not able. No one is able to see your screen.
No, we are not able to.
Yeah, earlier it was we were able to see, but now like in between it got disappear.
Okay, let me connect to this.
We only hear the voice only. We can't see the screen.
Yeah, one. Hey, 1 minute, yes. Are you able to
Yes.
see my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I'm
can
able
see.
to see your screen.
I think
Thanks,
it is.
Nihal.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so yeah, so far we discussed like what pre-request, right, when you say microservice. So now in your mind, now microservices is an architecture. We are going to achieve microservice architecture using Spring Boot. Spring is a framework. Okay. Okay. Again, you might get doubt what is Spring Boot, right? Before Spring, we were IOC framework where we have so many components, right? JDBC, IOC. So what Spring has come up with is like whatever we were writing boilerplate code, right? So they avoided all these things and they made it very kind of opinion oriented kind of framework. Okay, and you'll see when we are building services, right? You see the difference. Okay, now we'll see the application architecture evolutions, microservices benefits and challenges, and okay. So when you say architecture evolutions, right? So what we were doing when I started my career in 2004, like we used to use MVC design pattern, where before like Struts framework, so we were having servlets and JSPs. We use JSP use bin tags, and in between we create a servlets, a front controller as our own servlet, like what we create a servlet, and we used to build a one servlet that will work as a front controller. Then we take based on the URL pattern, we forward the request to corresponding servlet, child module servlets. So from there it will connect to the use bin. It's a Java base. So this was the architecture when we were having servlets and JSPs. After that, the struts was introduced, like where we have one front controller and JSF as well. So then it also use the MVC design pattern where we have actions, and from there we started interacting with the session beans, EJBs. So again we started using the EJBs, session packet design patterns, where we have entity beans that we connect into database. So those are like, see, if you notice, when you say whenever we design using servlets or JSP's application, we create a var file. When we include enterprise like entity beans like session beans, or okay, we are using a EAR file, enterprise archive file. So when you say monolithic application, right? What basically, if you notice, when you observe, monolithic application having so many advantages, because entire code is all, it's a single var or EAR. Okay, So we don't need to think too much about the latency between the components, fault tolerancy, whether when you interact with other component, we are least worried about thinking about. But why? So we have so many advantages. But why we evolved to microservice architecture? Like so, after that we went to SOA architecture. So when you say monolithic architecture, right? We are bundling as single ware. We are having so many advantages. The main disadvantage of monolithic is code base. If you say if it is a small application, it's fine, but your code base is huge. The people who are onboarded to your application to check out the code and starting application and understanding the modules, like interacting between the modules, it was taking a long time. Okay, that is the main disadvantage. And when you touch some module as a one enhancement, so we as a project manager, we need to do the regression testing. We perform all the entire application testing. So the time taking MVP, like whenever business wants some feature to put into production, in monolithic applications, it was taking long time. We might have added some very basic feature also, but we need to test entire application, performance testing, network testing, and okay, and again we need to deploy into production. So the entire regression testing take long time compared to development. So the way you move your MVP time to market to production is it's taking long time. Okay, how we are going to add how we are going to achieve that into the microservice architecture, we will see. Okay, now after that, see, now if you take as an enterprise any organization, like if you take any big organizations, we have, if you take, we have HR modules, you have payroll modules, but if you notice, everyone will not maintain their own employee details, right? So we have it's a centralized employee history data. It might be HR module where there. So before microservices, we were building a SOA kind of services, XML based. Then everyone will interact from their respective applications. Where do marshalling and unmarshalling, we do the JAX-based. We use JAX-based, we do marshalling and unmarshalling their visuals, and we were doing that. With that approach also, it was fine. But problem is, from when you make any call from the mobiles or any, when you say mobile clients, when you make a client from the Java client, it's fine. You build a SOA architecture service. Yes, if it is a client in Java, it's fine. But where if some web like mobile client want to interact, then they can't pass the XML, right? In the client code. So there they have so many disadvantages. So they need to have marshalling. So then they started building, instead of XML kind of transformation, they convert into JSON. Okay, JSON is it's a key value pair. So any client can understand the key value pair. There's no whether mobile client or it might be a browser, it's a Java client, anyone can pass their JSON object. It's a lightweight. Okay, we don't require any marshalling and unmarshalling mechanism. It's a plain string. Okay, so the disadvantage with SOA is where with Java clients, yes, we were reusing the code. We also, you might get doubt, right? So why we need extra, like mobile clients, we can build one more wrapper layer and we can build. That is also, we can, as per the strategy of the, we can, when you say we have based on the business and based on the application, yes, we can create one wrapper for that REST services, we can return from there as a JSON object. But still, where some mobile client, they don't want to directly interact with the services, it's not possible. Okay, now we'll go to the microservice architecture. Okay, microservices architecture is where your entire exchange between the client and consumer and producer, it's a JSON, it's a plain string. If you want to share some legacy systems, for example, I build a service, I have one mobile client and I have a legacy client. So might be any legacy client where they expect only XML. So we can build a services, same service can return JSON and same service can return XML based on the content type. So we can return multiple MIME types from the same service. Okay, but this is not possible from the SOA architecture. So your response always is a XML. But when it comes to the services, when you build a REST services, you can return the response in JSON and you can return the response in XML based on the content type which client provides. Who is the client who is consuming our service, based on this content type, we can build that. We'll see when we start building a services. Okay, so microservices Okay, now we'll go to the architecture. So monolithic architecture, we build everything as a single module. We deploy. Okay, so one disadvantage with monolithic architecture is one which is time to market, right? That is one of the, from the perspective of the business perspective. But when as a developer, I joined newly to one project to understand the entire code base and start building a new functionality. It's tedious, right? So I need to spend, someone has to spend so much time to explain the functionality, application architecture, sorry, your code base architecture. We need see application architecture is different or code based architecture where the reusable components. So we need to understand so much. Someone has to explain which module having a reusable code. So the utilization of the person who is onboarded to accelerate development is we can't utilize from day one. Okay, that is the monolithic architecture. But advantages is transaction management is very easy, exception handling, tolerancy, fault tolerancy, and logging, distributed log. I mean, you can see logs you can push. So it's very easy. But the main other disadvantage is if I want to scale the application, take in current. So if you note, if you take your business, for example, when you sizing your application, the demand of your business might be low, but as and when growing, right, your application having, if day by day the application users are increasing into your application, then I'll give an example. If you notice, if you observe, for example, if you start building Artstar as an application, they put the live as a cricket matches, right? If you notice, when India is playing with other countries, the viewers is 20 million, 30 million. But there are some other countries when they're playing, the viewers count is very less, like it's a 2 million. I mean, it's a like 3 million. But when you say, but how the same application should scale when I have a huge volume, when I have when I have less users also, I should able. So I should not kept my resources without using. Like I can't plan, like I can't procure my resources without utilization. So when I have a demand, I should be able to procure my resources, right? So before, like if you notice, before like mobiles, right? Before we were having very less users, right? Or if you say before we used to log into the bank from the site, and now if you say when you open, we have a mobile app and web app. If you say we have so many clients to the same application from the bank, as a user I can launch from the web, I can launch from my mobile. So there are so many ways to come to us. So the number of users are very high. Okay, how to scale? So where underline where previously we were deploying our applications in our dedicated infrastructure. If you take any organization, they are having dedicated infrastructure where you procure your Linux boxes. You need to specify which Java version you want. You need to specify core, like everything. We were like procuring upfront to deploy your application before production. So where you deploy your application, how many instances we want. So we create a one load balancer. But in that scenario, if that works, when you build your application within the enterprise world, like within the organization, so you don't increase the employees very drastically, right? They can't recruit hundreds of employees in a single day. But when you're building application in a social, like if you say any web applications, like any online stores or any application, so the demand of your application might go very high. How you size that kind of applications is the matter. Okay, so that we need an auto scaling feature. Whenever I have a demand more, I can scale, I can spin up another instances without human intervention. Okay, so that's the reason where we get the microservice architecture. So underline, we utilize the PaaS platform as cloud infrastructure like AWS or PaaS using PCF, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So we leverage the platform as service features. So we leverage our we can scale our application based on the CPU utilization or based on the HTTP response threshold. Like there are so many factors where we can configure when you want to auto scale your application. Okay. So now if you notice, another disadvantage is with monolithic application is as a manager, I upfront, so we used to build, we are building so many times, I mean, we used to build the monolithic application. Right? Upfront, we should decide whether which technology we are going to build, whether it's a Java, .NET, any programming. Upfront, we should decide which database. So For instance, when you have a multiple skill set resources, you, for example, your .NET resources, your Java resources, your different frameworks, languages. So you can't leverage everyone in the monolithic. Upfront, you are deciding which technology you are going to take. But in microservice architecture, you can build your microservices. You can do the technology diversity. You can build as modules as well availability of resources. One module you can build one framework, another module. At the end, you are going to return as a JSON. So when consumer knows only how to pass the JSON. So that is another big advantage in the microservices architecture using, okay. Now, if you, that is another technology diversity. But if you notice, so when we build microservices architecture, right, where we divide, okay, let me go to, okay. See, let's assume we have one monolithic application, like we take it as a Uber, okay. Let's assume they build as a monolithic application as all the modules. Now we started working on project to divide this into microservice architecture. So as a thought, like as per our knowledge on Uber, so I'm going to divide the modules as I know as the app information as for the business. So as a drivers, they check in, they whenever they come to the, when they started drive, when they started their drive from the Uber, first they check in their equipment, right? That's what because they should know what is the condition of the equipment, right? So that means the driver equipments. So this itself, so all entire checkouts, everything we can make as one. After that, I can make the users start requesting, right? So we have multiple ways of requests. So I can create an entire request module, users request. I can create a one user request module where I can create only user request. After request, so what we need to allocate the drivers to this particular request, right? So I know this information, then user request, I can do the users and drivers allocation, user request drivers allocation. I can apply multiple rules, multiple business rules I can apply based on the time, based on, we have so many rules, like, so I can allocate based on this request information. See, you might get doubt, right? How this information and this, so this connect to this database. So this connect to this database and this user request connect to this database. Then whenever you create here, we can connect here. We can fire an event to store this, whatever the minimum information. So this module might have so much information. We don't require. So whenever I want to allocate the driver, I need a from and to and what type of the request he wants. I don't want user information. I don't want his any information. I need his request from and to and from and to, and I need only from and to, then request ID. So that information only I can push whatever the minimum information, not from the data. So I can push whatever the minimum information which I require. I can push to here. Sorry. Okay. So now I know I can connect to this database. I can allocate. I have my own business rules. I can apply. I can do allocate. Once allocation happens, once allocation happens, what happens? We should notify a driver. We should notify user, right? We should, both users should be notified. So is a user, and I have a driver. I have two actors in this scenario. So we should have a one notification module to notify. That is the real-time notifications. Yes, I send the notification to drivers and I divide this into user. So we need to send a real-time. See, I don't know about Uber. I didn't know, but based on the application, what I use day by day, by understand, look at application. See, when I say I can divide this application to these many modules. So one notification is sent. What? And again, next the driver starts executing my request, right? So I will not maintain that information in this because the execution is different. Because why we need execution as a separate microservices is tomorrow I can apply the some analytics. So next writes when I get it from and to based on the I can get the distance. See, every driver based on the timing they take based on the knowledge what they have, multiple routes they can take, right? So we can suggest the best route to driver. So we need a request execution. We need a request execution. We need a separate. So whenever when the user starts their trip, then we maintain is all my database. Okay, this data we use for so many things, for this analytics. So you can use. If you notice, from we have divided these many modules. Okay, now if you notice, now after dividing these many modules in microservice architecture, the first question we should get, how, so where is the authentication module? Yes, so I need a one authentication man. So now, so far we were built form based authentication, and we were maintaining a credentials for authentication mechanism, right? So after that we evolved to SSO, single sign-on. So when you say single sign-on, now if you notice, whenever we log in with Facebook, right? If you notice so many web, if you want to log in from Stack Overflow, let me open. If you notice Stack Overflow login. Okay, see now when I want to log in, say they're giving provision to log in with my Google, GitHub, and Facebook. See, so they're giving provision to use third-party third-party authentication mechanisms. Okay, now why we which kind of mechanisms we should use when you're building your microservice architecture? We should go for the OAuth 2, because your application is sometimes when you build your enterprise applications or any applications, there's the possibility you might need to consume some services from external, or your application might be deployed on cloud. Okay, people who want to log in. So for example, we deployed our application in AWS, but I want to log in. Where we maintain our credentials? We don't maintain our own each application we can't. So we should have centralized mechanism. You can use Active Directory. So if you notice, if I want to log in, so this is assume this is our enterprise application. This is one of our applications within our organization. You say login with Google or login with whatever. So whenever I log in with Google, so it's redirecting to the Google's where I can provide my username and password, right? So same way, we can enable the OAuth 2, like when you use the Active Directory. So wherever you deploy your application, you can direct to back to your application's authentication mechanism to your organization. So I have authentication and authorization. So we use this OAuth 2. Okay, Spring OAuth 2 use authentication and so we use authorization. So this is the way user get validated, so driver get validated, and once we generate, we get a token. Okay, now we have a notification module, right? So notification module, now for how user will interact with all these modules. So every application we should have some proxy. We will not enter directly to the user. So user sends the request to the proxy. So now any action, like if you make any operation, first you go to the proxy service. Every application should have one proxy service. So proxy service where we can, if you notice, if you are Java developer, when you want enable a Marvin site, we always define a proxy. Everyone will not connect to external. We go from one server, proxy server. So where you can avoid any loss also. If you want to apply any business rules, you can apply on single server. So if we start from the user to all microservices, very difficult to control the flow. If you want tomorrow, I want to apply something, then it's very difficult. So, but any request I get from the proxy, and from here I forward the request to corresponding microservices. Tomorrow, if I want to apply any security or any patterns, so it's easy to enable the proxy. So every application should have one proxy server. Okay, if you notice, right? So I have a request execution, request creation. We have so many microservices, right? So as an application, so for me, we have seen I get a screens. I keep looking. First, I request creation. After that, allocation happens. After I start seeing my drive. I can see the locations how I'm going. at end user, it's the same. There is no change for you. But behind the scene, the execution data is retrieving from different microservices. Now, if you notice, right, now when you receive a request from here, so for example, when you make a payment, when you say request creation, okay, your request execution done, you need to make a payment, whatever the payment. Okay, now this request execution done, so it will make a payment. And how the service to service communication. So if you notice, in a real time, we can't put one instance, right? So for example, in a morning time, so I might have huge demand for requests because some people are going to office, so I have so many requests. So this module I can scale based on the demand. For instance, I have created a 10 instances. Okay, I have 10 instances, but how the proxy server can register, look up this, how proxy server knows to send, how to forward how proxy server send request to corresponding to one microservice. So that we call it as a, so we need some mechanism, we need some sidecar pattern, like we need a Eureka server. Okay, that's it. So for building this microservice like request creation or allocation, in this we use Spring Boot, plus we enable the security, and we enable the JPA, data JPA, to connect the database up to based on your database, whether it's a Cassandra, you can connect Cassandra, MongoDB, you can use Oracle, any SQL, you can connect to using DAJ. So we enable the Spring Boot, security, data JPA. So to build first microservice, each microservice level, this is required. Okay, each microservice level, we need this information. Okay, each microservice level, we need this information. Okay, boot, security, data JPA, entire information. So everywhere we build this, whenever you want to build a service, we need to enable the security. User sends with request with token. The token we should evaluate with the authorization module, OAuth2 server. Okay, OAuth2 this server. But now if you notice, I have 10 microservices. Okay, the building services using Spring Boot with security, data JPA, there's some other modules we can build. Okay, now let's assume we have already built our microservices using this Spring Boot and security. We have all the microservices ready. But how to consume this microservice? Because we have 10 instances. One way is you can create a load balancer on before this one. You can create one load balancer. Then you send a request. Then that will forward the request to load balancer. You can that is one way. Load balancer. That is also one way. Another way is you can create we call it as a Eureka server. That is called service registry. So whenever your microservices is bootstrap means whenever you start running your application, these microservices go and register with the Eureka server. Says, okay, I'm available this location. See, basically, whenever you want to make any call to remote host, remote system, remote service, we need a host and port, right? That's what we used to call. But okay, we should know only host and port number and what is the endpoint name to make a remote call. So same information whenever you use service registry. So each application go and register with Eureka saying this is my host and this is what I'm running on port. So Eureka's server registry having a like key value. It's like key value. Key is your application name. Okay, and key is your application name. In this scenario, my application name is request creation. So for example, my key will be like this. Okay, let me pull this one. Okay, my key will be like this. Request creation. This is my key name. Value will be if I deploy my application in, for example, IP address. For example, I'm saying localhost running on 8080 port, comma. Again, I'm running on another in the same host, other port number 8090. So same application you can run on in the same PC with the two ports. If it is a different host, it's a different host. Instead of local host, we can define the host name of the system. So, okay, for example, if I have 10 instances is running, now Eureka server will have a 10 register, one key, then I have 10 entries for the values, like it's a key value, right? Key is a request creation. Value will be having a list of my host and port with 10. If you deploy in the same host, a different host, if it is same host, different port numbers. If it's different host, you can run on the same port number. Okay. Now the second question we get, so one way of forwarding a request using load balancer, another way is Eureka server. Okay. Now, so this is, guys, this is the architecture. This is one-time setup for any application. Okay. But in this, if you notice, right, every service we need to build using this one. So entire architecture will be one-time setup, but every service level we need to write a logic like Spring Boot, security, data JPA, we write endpoints using this technology. Okay, this is modules. Okay, now I know list of 10 hosts running in Eureka, but how proxy server look up this one and forward? So to look up that, we have a framework called Joule, called Ribbon, you have Fiend client. Fiend is a declarative approach. Ribbon is where you write a kind of endpoint at the another endpoint at the client consumer level. Normally, whenever we consume any service, right, what we do, we call the host and port, we pass the response, and that's what we do, right? The Ribbon is that kind of where you start writing as an endpoint code to look up and get the data. The Fiend client is, it's a declarative. You don't write any kind. It's a kind of interface. So you look up the logic. Internally they implement they see either Joule or Fiend. Internally they use the Ribbon because they to look up this. So they look up the Eureka server. So want to look up from the proxy using this either any one of the tools. I need a application ID. In this scenario, my application ID is request creation. You notice the key is request creation is my. So what any of these tools, these are design patterns. Okay, these are the design principles, Eureka, Joule, Ribbon, Fiend. These are okay. What this proxy application does is, okay, whenever I receive a request with this URL pattern based on the what it contains some pattern. Okay, we can say my request contains request creation / whatever. So I can find by Eureka server using the application ID. Yes, I can get the list of available instances. Instances are nodes. You can call it any instance. I get a list of available servers. Then Ribbon internally having a load balancer mechanism. So that we call as a client-side load balancer. So we always see, previously we say, if you notice here, we have built one load balancing, right? We use Apache load balancing, we use any load balancing, different tools. But if you see, within the Java code also, we can write a load balancing mechanism using Ribbon. Within Java code also, so using Ribbon. Ribbon having a mechanism, so I get a list of available, see when I look up, so for by application ID, I get list of available servers. They maintain a cache from the round robin. They get a key and forward the request. They construct the URL and they forward the request to this particular microservice. Okay, this is what a service lookup, registry and service lookup. This is registry. This is we call as a service discovery. Okay. Now second question we should get. So now we say how we are overcoming, right? So we are overcoming based on the scaling this one. So we are using Eureka as a second. Now, if you notice, right, second question we should get how, if for instance, I don't have any instances available running, for instance, for any reason, whether data center might went down or any possible scenarios, they might have outages for any reason, the entire request creation is not available. What happened? I'm keep getting a request to the users from the request creation. So what happened? If for example I have number of application threads, right? We do sizing based on the available threads. What happens? We keep sending a request to this particular which is not available. Okay. So for example, I'm getting 1,000 requests. Sorry. So I'm getting 1,000 requests. For example, if you notice, so I have a request creation. For example, from here I have payment module. So let's assume payment model is developed by some third party. We don't have our own payment. Let's assume this is developed by third party. So whenever I get per second I get 1,000 requests. Okay, 1,000 requests to my application. But whenever I had a discussion with the payment module, when I interact with them, saying that I can't say we should have agreement, right? How many transactions per second? How many transactions per second you want to support? We says, okay, I need 500 per second transactions per second. So at any given point of time, the payment module will receive 500 requests from this application. Take they have agreement. But suddenly I got a huge demand, 1,000 requests. We can't delegate all 1,000 requests to payment module because that's what agreement. So if then their system go down, right? See, whenever they're sizing also, they go with all the considering all the data elements, they start doing their sizing application, right? So even you might get doubt, right? So you said you auto scale we can do, but auto scaling also we can do one range because there is a scenario. They might be someone is doing the malicious, they might be running the request value from automation. So for those you can't go as much as you can, right? That you can't consume the entire memory because they should have threshold for auto scaling also. You should first analyze whether these requests are valid or invalid. Correct? Someone might run automation also, they can create a n number of requests. So you can't scale your application consuming entire AWS resources. So then you should have threshold for even your auto scaling as well. Let's assume we agreed for 500 requests per second, transaction per second. We have 1,000. But how to control my request to forwarding to this one? We should have. So then the second scenario, this is one scenario. Second scenario, I have take scenario payment module might be upgrading some new features. Okay, they have outage, but still take scenario they might have outage of 30 minutes. But as a Uber application, already you have which are requests which are already creating. So we need a payment module only for whichever the execution completes, right? But request creation, allocation, task execution, I don't need any payment because all rule engines I know I can get the amount, but payment will be so what happens when their application is down? Okay, I should not block all my threads, for example, during that 30 minutes. So where during those 30 minutes when they outage, but still my application other modules are up and running. So I should not block. You might get out, right? How threads are blocked? For example, take scenario. How I can support max 1,000 threads. Let's assume I'm supporting 1,000 threads. But out of 1,000 requests, 1,000 threads means internet request, right? 500 requests are sending for the, so take scenario 600 requests are sending for the for payment. 400 requests are still progressing for creation or whatever the execution. But this 600 requests, the payment model is not available. What happened? So we have timeout. So my thread will be waited that particular time, right? So I get exception. So we wait some time. So that thread will be blocked from this proxy server also, right? So where we requested, so we requested from proxy because user requested one thread. This thread initiated a request to remote. So this is the parent thread. This thread is blocking thread. IO operation. It's a waiting state. They get from here to here. So, but this is out of. This is having a. They have upgrades for 30 minutes. Like they have outage for 30 minutes. But I'm trying to make a remote call during that time. Then that's 30 minutes. So I have my thread will, I mean, in the sense I have some timeout. So here I'm waiting for, I'm blocking one thread here and one thread here. So I'm blocking two threads. So I'm blocking threads which is not, I'm trying to send a request which is a not available resources. So how to avoid this kind of scenarios? So where we can enable the circuit breakers. What advantage with circuit breakers is, the circuit breakers having a mechanism, instead of sending all the requests, 500 requests, if you send the, like you can send 20 requests or 100 requests, like you can say 20 requests. If 20 requests are failed, okay, subsequent request, 21st request, don't send to the payment. You serve from the fallback. When you receive the response back from the service, then this thread will not wait, right? So your threads are not waiting state. So That is the another advantage. So using circuit breakers, you can restrict your number of calls to making a remote using semaphores. Second, you can avoid the because you should not try which is unavailable application, which is not available. Should not send your request and waiting your threads. Again, you are calling who is the client. His threads also going to waiting state. So you should not block all the waiting state. When you open the circuit breakers, so first 20 requests will be blocked. It will wait some time. 21st request will be served from the fallback. Then this thread will not go waiting state because this thread will get response very fast. So that way you can avoid the using circuit breakers. You can avoid all the issues. Okay, you can utilize your resources properly. Okay. So now we are seeing the circuit breakers. So you might get doubt, right? Circuit breaker is a pattern, but how we are going to achieve? There are two ways. One is Strix, that is built by Netflix. We have a resilience version. Now circuit breaker is Strix is like there are no, it's a maintained state, so they don't have any. They are not, the Netflix is not adding any new features, so we should use the resilience version. So we see both. Okay, no issues. Okay, now we see the circuit breaker, right? Now second question we should get. Now let's assume this application is deployed, currently available in production. Take business user has said, okay, I'm getting this error. As a support guy, where to look this all the issues? Like I don't know, right? This request, first I should know what this request, how many microservices has hit, then where is the issue, where is the way, which microservice is causing issue. We should analyze all the things, right? So that we should maintain a centralized logging mechanism using the Splunk whatever. Okay, you can use centralized mechanism. You can push all the logs to Splunk. So this is, if it's third party, so we don't maintain logs. You response level you maintain. Before making a payment, you have payment module, right? So you push the logs to your Splunk, and you push the logs from all the microservices, all the whatever the micro. So centralized user will log into. So now you might get another doubt. How I know, how can I relate all the logs? Correct? As I discussed, as a support guy, I can't go and see each microservices logs, and I can't. It's very difficult. It will go for a long time to identify the root cause. By that time, your logs will be like archived. So now how? So we can, another mechanism. Another solution is you can push all the logs from different microservices to your centralized logging mechanism. I'm giving as Splunk. Okay. Now you can push to Splunk. But how I can relate these logs to one transaction, right? In monolithic application, if you notice, when if you run your application, thread name will be displayed as part of your logs, right? So whenever request comes, each request based on the user ID, we see the logs. By that user ID, we see the log corresponding thread. By thread name, we get all the request logs for the particular thread. That is the one way where we debug that. But how we do it? So when I run the application, thread pool is different here, thread pool is different here, one different thread pool. You have n number of thread pools. So each thread pool having different naming, right? So how we can go by thread pool name? How to view the logs? Then, so now we have a mechanism. That is the one problem. Second, as a developer, I should know whenever user requests for it, if user performs any operation, what are the microservices it hit? So that also we should see. That we use using Jipkin. Okay. Use the Jipkin. Use the Jipkin to achieve all this. So we should enable. So to achieve this one, we need to enable the logging mechanism using the sleuth. So we have a sleuth. We call it as a sleuth. S-L-U-E-T-H, sleuth. We enable sleuth here. We enable sleuth here. Enable sleuth all microservices. So sleuth having some mechanism. So whenever we send a request, it will generate 3 IDs. One is trace ID, span ID, and one parent ID. Okay. So basically so you might get doubt, right? As a developer. So you might get doubt as a developer. Why I should think too much about all this? So in microservice application architecture, so whenever someone is giving architecture, right, we should he sits somewhere in the place as an architect team, he give all his information. As a developer team, we build our code and we'll give. So at the end, before deploying into a production, someone asking whether did you follow these patterns. That's what the approach we followed so far before microservices. So we put all question marks. So we are not implemented this way, we are not implemented that way, then we go and display. But in microservice architecture, the behind the scene, I mean, you are going to address all the non-functional requirements from day one. So microservice architecture, did ever as a developer, anytime did we configure threads for to call other microservice? We never. Did we consider logging mechanism, how to look up in the production? We never thought about that, right? We always, our thought process was just building a logic. That's what when you say, when we are building application monolithic architecture, just we think, right, okay, write a code and close that. But we never thought how this is going to support in application, someone get issue, how to debug. We never. So that's what microservices architecture enforcing developers to think non-functional requirement from day one. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So now, yeah, so we enable the Splunk. Yes, we enable the Sleuth. It has Sleuth having a, so you might get another doubt, right? Why Joule, Ribbon, Eureka? These are all already predefined cloud components by Spring. So we need to configure. Just we need to configure in our application. But every day to day, you will not write everything like Sleuth enabling. So trace, it's a one-time activity for your application. But whenever you're working on microservice application, should know all these components. Whenever you get issue, you can should have. But day-to-day work will be always writing a services. Okay, this is a day to. You might get out, right? Am I doing everything every day? No. This is one-time setup. When you address non-functional requirement in day 1, 2 sprints in your day-to-day work, 1-2 sprints, you clear all these non-functional requirement. After that, you start building your services. So you work every day to day, you start building your services. The advantage, as we discussed, right, one time to market. So for example, I want to add one feature, which is driver any whatever equipment check-ins. I want to add some feature. So where I want to send a notifications, I'm adding a new feature. In microservice architecture, I don't need to test entire application, right? I added a feature notifications. I added like toasters. Let's assume I implemented toasters. I implemented some different mechanism of sending a notification. So I no need to touch all these modules. Just I can do. So the spending effort of testing, the time to market is very fast. So personally, if I check out the code of notification module, I know this is going to serve only notification modules. I'm not going to touch any driver equipment or whatever. So I know this module will be more on notifications, because you're what you upfront, you know what I'm going to touch. So each you might get another doubt. What this all how we can divide these microservices? Yes, we should divide based on the business bounded business. So each context having some. So if you say driver, which is all related to this domain driver level, I make it this up. Okay. Now we go to the Sleuth. Sleuth having a cap. Whenever I send a request, we generate a trace ID and span ID and parent ID. Okay. So it first request receives the proxy server level. Then in this level, the trace ID and span ID will be same. So for this is a root request, right? So that it doesn't have any parent ID. So trace, let's say trace ID I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then span ID will be like so first request trace ID and span ID both are same. Okay. So now I am forwarding request to the request creation. Okay. Now Sleuth, we enabled Sleuth. Again, we discuss every microservices, it generates its own span ID, unique span ID. Then it generates here like 5. Let's say in RQ request creation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now each microservice level span ID is unique. Okay. Now each if from here we send a payment module, Again, if this model is ours within this application, again here span ID is its own. Like span ID will be like pay model like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So span ID is unique at each microservice level. But whichever the request we receive, root request, we receive one request, right? Proxy level, the trace ID and span ID both are same. Okay, when we send it, when we forward this request to this microservice level, it generates its own span ID. Then trace ID will be the trace ID will be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's because the trace ID will be carried forward to all the microservices. It will forward to same ID. Now here parent ID will be the span ID of where we received a request, like previous microservices. What is the previous microservices? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 span ID. Okay. Now take scenario from here we forward the request to payment model. If you notice here, the span ID is unique, it's generated. You notice trace ID. Okay. Again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what we discussed. Which is generated at the root level that will be carried forward to all the microservices. Again, parent ID will be my previous microservices span ID. What is the previous microservices request creation? RQ 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, if you notice across all these calls, my trace ID is unique, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 5, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each one having its own span ID. Parent ID, as we discussed, it's a previous microservices ID, previous microservices span ID. Yes, if you see here, parent, here if you notice, parent ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, whenever you send any exception to user, okay, you cascade your correlation ID. This you call it as a correlation ID to the customer, which is ID as per your business. Then user report to the support team pass this ID. They will share the screenshots, whatever, right? Then user can search this trace ID in the logs. Then you will get, because all the logs are pushed to centralized logging mechanism, right? They can view the based on the trace ID. Now you will get all your logs to in aggregated fashion. So you can easily debug what is the request when it comes to here, what is the output, what is the input and output, what is input and output. So now see, we address the debugging. The debugging is very difficult, right? Now we are just using sleuth. Okay, this is microservices. The how to debug is a difficult. I mean, what are the challenge? But we are able to achieve that. We are able to accomplish that debugging using sleuth. Okay. Okay. We looked at the debug logs. We looked at the history, circuit breakers, service lookup, service registry. We look up the OAuth2 authentication mechanism. Yes. Have another mechanism. So far, if you look at, we were writing logs in application or property. Say we bundle within the jar or where. If you make any change, so we need to redeploy your application, right? But you can define your configuration files in external system like in Bitbucket or GitHub. Okay, you can maintain your all application.properties files. You can enable the Spring config client, Spring config server. Okay, Spring you can enable the config server, and you need to enable the config client here. Okay, config client. So what you can fetch your configuration from the external repository like Bitbucket or any GitHub using the config server. So first we need to enable the config client in the each microservice level. That config client interacts with the config server. So config server loads the files from the Bitbucket or whatever, like from any third party as any repositories. So we are externalizing our. So if you notice all the principles, right? These are all 12 factors. So if you notice, before when we deploy your monolithic application, right? We used to deploy in Tomcat, or we used to deploy in the JBoss or WebLogic server, OSIS4j server. So if you want to deploy your application, someone has to install some server in your Linux box. But that is a manual interest, right? But in real time, for example, what is the Spring Boot? What is how we are going to how we are deploying in using Spring Boot? Spring Boot they enable the inbuilt Tomcat server. Okay, okay guys, any questions so far what we discussed? If you have any questions, we can take it. Otherwise, I'll show you how fast we can create a project setup. What is the inbuilt Tomcat? I'll show you as a one demo in this creating a Spring Boot project. So this is what about microservices. All this I'll show you in a day to day. I'll write a code. I'll show you day to day when we're running. I'll write a code in a classroom directly. Okay, I'll not show taking examples and so. Any questions, guys? So let me go to. So we discuss the boot. So microservices benefits. It will reduce the.
Nehal.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to know, can you let us know what are the topics you are covering with the Studio? So like, so mainly what you're covering. I wanted to know the topic before go inside. I know it's a demo class, I understand. So I wanted to know what are the main topics you're covering.
Yeah, sure. So see, first prerequisite, you should know some basic knowledge on Java. As we discussed, you should know Spring basic, how to auto wire, those just basic. You don't need to be, we don't write any XMLs. So everything is annotations. That's what I'm saying. Even if you're not a Java developer also, only thing is you should know the for loops, while loops, what is class, what, okay, that's what you should know. Just basic Spring knowledge. What is IOC, what is Bean? We always use some names, right? So then we use Spring Boot, okay? We use initializers, project initializers. We define all the annotations we define. Beans, configuration, qualifier, JPI repository, auto configuration, auto wires, import resources. Okay, we define all the resources. Apart from this, we start creating a resources using we build the services. So we deal with the multiple, as we discussed previously, we do the multiple MIME types. The same service will return JSON and same service return the XML, and we return the versioning as well. For example, one client wants one way of the output. So when you do versioning also, we enable we have multiple ways to implement. I will show you what is the best way to do it. Okay. Then are you able to see my screen, guys?
Yes, I can. You can.
Okay, good. So after that, we start building services. Okay. So after that, we start using data JPA. We create because if you notice architecture wise, so this we concentrate more because you need to build services day to every day, right? So we need to data JPA security. So let me open that. So we create a repositories, we define ORMs, one to many, many to one, all the JPQL, we define repositories, we define all the data JPA. Okay, we define all the data JPA, how to connect to database, get the data, and so with this you'll able to build the services. Okay, after that we enable the see now now first you have a knowledge on Spring, what is what initially. After that we start building a services. Once I build the services, now I enable the authentication for that service. So we enable the Spring security. I'll explain the Spring security and number of phase of security, and I enable the WAR to open it using Google. We can use third party as a Google, use how to validate my application with the Google ID. So using Google ID, we can log in. So that is, I can show you. After that, we do the code coverage because yeah, sure, I'll share the file. Okay. Yeah. So after that, we do the code coverage. So, okay, if you notice here, JPA, we do different JPA mechanisms. We see the inheritance, right? We have a modeling also. We have inheritance mechanism, where to use, where we have, and strategies. We have per table class for all Hibernate ORM features. Okay, all ORM features we discuss here because you connect to data every time you connect to database and get the data. Okay, that's where you write so much logic in getting data and processing, right? So that's where we discuss here. And after that code coverage, we discuss. After that, start discussing about the now patterns, service discovery, service lookup. Again, first I deploy, we build all the services in my local desktop in Eureka server. Then same services we deploy in Pivotal Cloud Foundry. This is the platform as a service, PaaS. I log into the PaaS. I'll show you how to auto scaling and how to register, how to look up. Those I'll see PCF, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. Okay, a platform as a service, how to deploy, that we'll touch in one cloud using PCF. Okay, this is a plat. It's not AWS. It's a PaaS, platform as a service. Okay, here we go deal with everything is a build packs. Okay, now after that we go discover the Joule, Ribbon, Fiend, cloud routings. As discussed previously, as microservice architecture, we receive a request, we forward, right? My request forwarding will be routing. So we discuss about routings. Okay, then cloud tracing. So these are the patterns: cloud routing, cloud discovery, registry, cloud tracing. So tracing we had discussed. I want to see how. So we use Sleuth, Zipkin. Okay. After that, circuit breakers. Previously it was Strix. Now we discuss about Resilience4j as well. So circuit breakers we see. Now config server. Now we as discussed where we externalize all our application properties to the. So we look at the config and config server. And now we have discussed only the one scenario, but in your microservices architecture, you are dealing, right? So in the real time, as I said, we have 10 instances, but I change the Bitbucket one property. How to refresh all these 10 instances? That is a different mechanism that we use the Spring Cloud Bus using RabbitMQ. So you can't refresh one by one. See, I changed, for example, you had an application property, you externalize the application properties to Bitbucket or GitHub. Then yes, config server connects to that, and all microservices fetch from data from the config server. Yes, I have latest, I have application properties and my application up and running. But take scenario, I change some properties. Okay, there are some instances where some people, when there is a one database is down, you will connect to DR or whatever. I'm saying just instances. Okay, you want to connect to different database, then you switch. That time, how to load reload these properties, that you, because I don't know how many one instance I can refresh, but if I have 100 instances I can't go refresh one by one, right? So to refresh everything in a single shot, we go by, can this method be used for shopping mall application? Yeah, we discussed, don't worry. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, so we use Spring Cloud Bus using RabbitMQ and auto scaling as we discussed, Pivotal Cloud Foundry. If now everyone knows the Git, right? Previously I used to give Git also. Now I'm not giving Git. Okay, these are things we discuss. Any questions? Any questions, guys?
How long the process will take to complete the things?
So it's like every day, like we need to look at like every day 1.5 hour session or 1 hour session. It will take 45 classes.
45 classes, that means 45 days, including Saturday, Sunday.
That we have to plan based on the people who joins. That still this is a demo class, right? People based on once people join, will take availability, whether it's feasible at weekends or how we have to see the feasible based on the availability of the resources.
Are you planning to arrange the class at the same time?
Sorry?
Are you planning to arrange the class in the same time, or you prefer the daytime only?
No, I didn't get it. Means?
Are you planning to the class arranging at 8 p.m. the Indian time, or you want to prefer in the daytime?
No, that's what we'll see. Like it's not we are not taking any decision. It's the people's availability. Based on that, we'll take a decision.
Okay, okay. Go on, go on.
Okay.
Will you cover Docker also?
Hi,
Yeah,
hello.
yeah, hello.
Yes. Hi, I have got a quick question. Actually, my daughter, she is taking this class, and she went through all the demo. In this one, like what thing you are going to cover? You showed us like Joule and all those setup, right? In the entire architecture. So is it
Correct.
going to be the entire architecture you are going to teach, or only portion of that?
No, we are going to build entire architecture. At end of session, we have these many components in our application.
So all these components will be there in the application.
Correct. So when we
Okay.
start, first we see, first day one we can't go build everything, right? First we should understand the building services, connected database. So this part we concentrate. Once this is done, we can leverage another service. Then we write services. Then we see the authentication increase. So same architecture we build. At end, you will see these many components, these many architecture. Entire architecture you see in our application. I mean, in demos.
Okay. So like the where you were talking about Joule, all those things will be covered. Edureka, all those things, right?
Correct. All this yes, correct.
Okay. That's what my question. So this class will be like at what time?
See, that's what basically we need to see the number of participants. Then based on their availability, then we can decide.
Okay, sure. That will be awesome. Man. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll share this agenda. Okay. Any questions, guys?
So tomorrow we are going to have the call.
No, you please check with the visual. Please coordinate the visual path. They will start scheduling a calls. Okay. I think today demo is done.
Okay, sure.
Today demo is done. So we don't based on the people's participants, then we can take a call and we can start putting. Okay. Demo part is done. If you have any questions, we can discuss. Any questions, guys?
Are you gonna send us an email regarding the time and stuff?
Yes. Yeah. The usual path team will they'll contact you guys. So they'll share this agenda and your availability. So based on the participants, then we can go ahead and schedule one schedule. Then based on the schedule, we will join. Okay, we'll connect every day.
Okay, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
So it's for today. It's over.
Yeah. So today is over.
And are you gonna share the Word document with us with like all the topics?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You will get this document. Okay.
Okay. And question. I'm so sorry. Like all the PowerPoints that you've made, are you also gonna share that with us, or should we take notes as we go, or like you're not gonna share that with us?
This document.
The PowerPoint.
Oh, this PowerPoint. Okay, sure. I will share. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that works. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any questions, guys?
Oh, we'll have a lot of, can I say, you're going to provide us a lot of practical, like and create a project and do the things all practical, is it?
See, I will show you day-to-day class. I will write a code in front of you. I will give this to GitHub. I will push to GitHub. Then you practice.
You can, I mean, like I feel like you're talking so fast, so maybe you can go a bit slow. It's okay, fine.
Yeah.
Nehal, will you be deploying this microservices into a Kubernetes cluster?
No. Initially, no. We don't do right. First concentration, we understand the microservice. Demo-wise, we'll see at the end. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about the future sessions. Will that be
Yeah.
included?
No, that I will give I mean, it's not part of this course, but I will give as a one demo. But we'll not go in detail. Kubernetes is big, again, it's a big subject, right? So I need to cover the pods, services, metro policy. So that's what it's a big architecture. So we are not including that in this this agenda, but just I will deploy into cluster. But we don't discuss anything. What is architecture, what is the pods, what is the file. Okay.
Okay. So this boxes which you mentioned the architecture, right? So each one is called as an application. So you will create a pipeline for everything.
So each one is an independent application, right? We can create each one is one.
Yeah.
We have a number of pipelines.
So are you creating so many pipelines?
No, we don't create. We don't deploy anywhere. I mean, you want to say you want to deploy somewhere using Jules. I mean, in the sense, you want to deploy Jenkins. You want to deploy using Jenkins.
Like I saw this as Azure, microservices. This one, right? So you are explaining the concept of only microservices.
Correct. So I will not. We don't write any CI/CD pipelines.
Okay. Can you share us the agenda?
Yeah, sure. I'll share.
Yeah. Thank you.
So can we close the call now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. If you have any questions, if you don't have any questions, we can wind up.
Yeah, we can have the questions once we have the detailed session tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Okay. Okay. Guys. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining.